Hello everyone and welcome to a Path of Exile 2 build guide video for a Decompose Pathfinder. This build has been an absolute blast to play. Simply chaining packs with poison, cloud, explosion. It gets ridiculous very fast. And this is based on the Corpse Wade unique boots. So what these boots do is they give us a skill, level 18 Decompose, and the important thing here is that they consume a corpse to create a cloud of flammable poisonous gas. The flammable part does not matter for our build as we are playing a poison build with Pathfinder. But the key part here is that it poisons enemies as though dealing chaos damage equal to a flat chunk percentage of the corpse's maximum life. What this means is, in effect, our damage is scaled by the corpse's maximum life, which naturally scales into higher tier maps. So you don't actually see a difference in performance as you go from a tier 1 map to a tier 18 map, because you're functionally multiplying your damage by the life of the monster you're trying to kill, because you're chaining functionally corpses between packs of monsters, and it is simply war crime-esque, as it were. It is a very good time, has excellent clear for things like breaches, ritual, expedition. I've really had no problems with the build whatsoever in terms of mapping and clear speed. It's been a good time. Other than that, we are Pathfinder, so we are taking the Contagious Contamination for some poison proliferation action and overwhelming toxicity, just because this is double damage with a downside that does not really matter, because we'll always have multiple clouds of poison up, always capping us at max stacks of poison. And then Traveler's Wisdom, just because it is excellent. We're taking Poisonous Concoction here just because occasionally you can get caught where you need to start the chain and your minions won't be back up. More on that in a second with the weapon swap, and you can just throw a Poisonous Concoction down, kill a guy, have Decompose trigger off the corpse, and start the chain again. So that's kind of just like a get out of jail free card if you happen to be in minion cooldown jail, as it were. Other than that, we are doing normal poison stuff, pathing through here. Movement speed is very desirable on this build just because you are using a set of boots with 10% movement speed, which can feel pretty bad at baseline, so it is imperative, I would say, to grab all the movement speed elsewhere. That being said, this build really doesn't cast skills. You're walking around and you'll just chain corpses into poisonous clouds by walking around, and that's kind of the whole deal. You don't have to cast your skill. I mean, you throw out your Winter Orb, which will apply Wither, more on that in a second if you need to, and your Poisonous Concoction if you're really struggling to start the clear. But because of that, your movement speed is kind of pseudo higher just because you're not stopping to cast skills really ever. You're just walking around, which is excellent. So for that reason, we're taking lots of movement speed on the tree. It's good. Shocker, movement speed, who would have thought it? Other than that, we're pathing down to the poison here. +1 poisons here. +1 poisons up here. There it is. Taking us to 3 poisons. We're using the Snakebite unique gloves. You really don't have to do this. I was playing for a while just with a pure set of evasion gloves, and that was also very good. Gives you a bit higher evasion for your evasion energy shield hybrid sort of defense survival pool, and that's really nice. Until you get pretty good evasion gear, which I would say constitutes a good waxed or scalper jacket and a high energy shield feathered tiara, I would probably just go pure energy shield and drop all of these evasion passives. Just path over here to the start of which, grab your nice chunky energy shield passives. You can also path up here, grab enhanced barrier. It's all good stuff, but I have found evasion and energy shield to be an excellent defense combination, combined with ghost dance and some really strong hybrid passives on the tree. So we've got subterfuge mask. The reason I'm using a pure ES helm is because of this passive. We just get a nearly 800 flat evasion, which is crazy. Like, that's almost what our chest is just from this one passive. And then, of course, Spectral Ward, also very good. You could do a pure evasion body armor here, but I find the hybrid still to be very nice, and Spectral Ward just to be a nice boost on top of that. You know, taking all the evasion passives. More movement speed here, always welcome for the aforementioned reasons. Immaterial, just more evasion rating. And we're even pathing over to the start of Monk to get these little energy shield, very point efficient passives going through energy shield recharge. It's good to get a few of those just because we are also taking patient barrier, which is too good not to take. I think with the amount it increases your maximum energy shield, but it is nice to not have a 5-second energy recharge. That can feel very bad in boss fights. Otherwise, yeah, it's poison passives. We've got some chaos passives. We actually take spaghettification and event horizon. Event horizon can be a real no-no for energy shield builds that are poison or chaos skill in general because you're constantly interrupting your energy shield recharge, which can feel very bad. Decompose is a triggered skill, so you're not actually using a chaos skill. So this doesn't actually trigger, and the only time this is going to trigger is when we use Poisonous Concoction, which is not very often and functionally never in something like a boss fight when it would really matter, or when you have lots of monsters on the screen where it would also really matter, but you're going to be chaining corpses with that high of a monster density, so you're not going to need to use Poisonous Concoction. So these are actually really high value chaos damage passives that really don't have significant downsides for our build, so that's very nice. Other than that, taking these hybrid chaos damage skill effect duration, great. Clouds last longer, no complaints there. And then pure chaos, this one is actually very important because it allows us to apply wither with winter orb. So winter orb, or not winter orb, Eye of Winter rather, fires 8 charged projectiles in spiral, shoots this, and what this does combined with deceleration and persistence is move slower to shotgun more of the projectiles that emanates into a high priority target like a boss or a rare. And with Withering Touch, because we're gaining 11% of all damage, including the cold damage from Eye of Winter, as chaos damage, we're actually withering with every hit of it. And this quickly gets us to max wither stacks. It's very good. There's nothing else really to say there. I think that is it for the passive tree. Oh, of course, taking Chaos Inoculation, it's just very good, and we're already stacking the absolute mess out of energy shields, so, you know, being immune to chaos damage, which deals double damage to energy shield, is just good. Who could have predicted such an outcome? Not me, I know. We're also taking Whispers of Doom, because we are doing a dual Blasphemy Curse setup with Temp Chains and Despair. This is really unnecessary and not optimal, I would say, just because you can opt for a wand instead, like a wand with a bunch of chaos damage, let's say. Oh. But the reason that Scepter is perhaps deceptively better than than a wand, while you're not getting that % increased chaos damage, we actually already get. Chaos damage is not a stat that's actually abundant on the tree, so it is valuable, but we actually get quite a bit by being able to path into Event Horizon and Spaghettification, so that's very nice. But the plus level to chaos skills, normally this would scale quite a lot of your damage with any given chaos skill. However, with Decompose, this only adds a 0.5% of the corpse's maximum life per level, so you're really not gaining that much damage. So its skill levels don't actually help, which is one of the reasons you would really want a wand. You can still get a high chaos damage wand, and that will still do you well, but it's not as good as you might think. And for that reason, just because dual blasphemies is very comfortable, that's what I've opted to do. Combined with Zone of Control, it's very good. Just because Temporal Chains is already slowing them, and then we're adding a Hinder on top of that. Enemies just kind of move in slow motion towards you through incredibly toxic gas clouds, and it is a very good time, and you really have no issues whatsoever with survivability combined with your already excellent evasion, energy shield, defensive layers. What do I have Clarity and Vitality and Discipline because it's free, but it's really not doing anything for me because I don't really cast skills, and you don't consume mana to cast Decompose. Speaking of casting Decompose against single target, You're not actually able to generate corpses unless you're in a boss with ads, which is great. If you get ads, use them. You don't need to do this. But because we do need single target still, we're actually using the weapon swap. So if you take a look at the passive tree here, you can see we're pathed into Zone of Control and Curse passives, as well as a bit of extra area of effect with our weapon swap 1. And if we swap to 2, you'll see that we switch to a bunch of minion revive speed and increased maximum life passives. These are good because how we are doing single target damage is with the skeletal brutes. So you'll notice here I've got them right here, and only on weapon swap 2. So I'm going to swap, they're going to all summon in, and when I swap away, they'll all go away. It's important to have no minions on weapon swap 1, including not having a scepter that gives you the skeletal warriors, because this will mess up your minion respawn cooldown, and you need them to all go on cooldown at the same time to maximize your damage uptime on bosses. Other than that, because we are using these really high level skeletal brutes, we're using sacrifice, of course, to use them in place of corpses. And we've chosen skeletal brutes, of course, just because they have a massive life pool total. You can see here, 25,025. I've seen some versions of this build using the skeletal clerics with things like Last Gasp, and that is comfortable because they will revive each other. But the thing with the skeletal clerics, if I just take one of these off and add one of them here and take a look at the skill panel, even if we slap on Meat Shield, like we did here, and slap on, let's say, a +1 to minion, we're only getting a tiny fraction. Like that's less than a quarter of the life of our skeletal brutes. So you're really, really suffering on single target damage if you opt for skeletal clerics. So we've just gone all skeletal brutes, and that has worked out absolutely fine. The single target on this build is very, very serviceable, combined with its already excellent defensive pool. I would say you really have no problems in bosses whatsoever. Other than that, in order to run these minions on our weapon swap, we've got a scepter, and you're off your weapon swap to scepter. You just want minions have maximum life and plus to level of all minion skills. Both of these are functionally your damage stats because levels will increase, on a different multiplicative axis than minion life. So you're scaling your already increased minion life passives, and of course that's also a good stat by itself because we are using the life to deal damage. But this isn't even very good, and it's doing absolutely fine. This is solo self-found. You can absolutely get better gear in Trade League, or even solo self-found. I just haven't been particularly lucky. Other than that, we've just thrown on Oaksworn. Extra Spirit helps me edge out another skeletal brute. That being said, I've got 4, and it's comfortable to have 4 when I have a total of 10 stacks of poison that I can apply, but you don't need 4 because the clouds will tick every second applying poison. So even if you have 3, you're still going to probably keep up max stacks of poison, assuming you have all of the good poison duration passives. So no issue there, I would say. In order to run these, we're not running Blasphemy on our second setup. So it is good to swap, have all the minions explode in the cloud, and then swap back so you can continue to apply Temp Chains and Despair to the boss and such things. I think the only thing that we leave running on Weapon Swap 2 from Weapon Swap 1 is Grim Feast, just because you don't want to lose, a double overshield that you potentially have from Grim Feast, so it's nice to keep that going. Yeah. That's kind of what's going on here. Oh, I suppose we might want to look at the gem leaks for the main skill. But with Decompose, we're just using the best poison support gems for the highest DPS. Well, that's actually not true. We're using area of effect gems because it is nice to chain between maps. Deadly poison, absolutely insane because we're not actually doing hit damage. Maybe we are technically somewhere under the hood, but there's no hit damage to be dealt like a conventional poison would be applied. So this is just 75% more multiplicative magnitude, which is fantastic. No complaints there. We're using Magnified Effect just because more area of effect is very good. On bosses, I actually swapped this out for Minion Pact. Because we're Chaos Inoculation, we only have 1 maximum life. So if I throw this here, move to my weapon swap, which is what we're going to be doing for bosses anyway, when it casts, it's going to remove 1 life from a nearby minion. Oh god, so bad. No, very good. To deal 40% more damage, so that's just fantastic, and you can see here that it is supported the check mark right here with Decompose, so we do know that that's working. Comorbidity. Targets can be affected by one poison by supported skills at the same time. You know, good. Not necessary, but good. And the less poison duration, again, with the number of poison clouds we have, really is not an issue. Spell Echo just helps you... You're basically doing 2 corpses per cast, which makes it very nice. And the more area of effect is also very nice. So, you could also swap this out for damage support on bosses, but honestly, I kind of prefer the, like, walk once and cast twice, just because you're in your weapon swap too a little bit less, and it feels a little smoother. But you could opt for more damage there if you feel you need it. But in general, area of effect will help you a lot while mapping Decompose. Other than that, we've got Poisonous Concoction, which is really just scattershot with all the other gems we didn't want to run on our Decompose that were not quite as good, but still pretty good. Chaos Infusion, Close Combat, Chaos Mastery, and Culling Strike. Culling is just nice if you're getting a boss down at the end. But the damage on Poisonous Concoction is really not in question, and because we're not actually stacking chance to poison, it works really well because it has 100% chance to poison on hit. So, perfect sort of starter thing to chain on this build. Other than that, I can show the gear, but it's pretty stock standard. Snakebite is nice with the extra poison. Of course, the Corpse Wade boots. Oh, open swap. Our scepter here really doesn't matter. I've just gone for a bunch of spirit. This is not a very good scepter for spirit. You could get even more to run something like, where is it? Withering Presence as well, which you can see is not on at the moment just because I don't have the spirit for it. And honestly, it's not super necessary a lot of the case because you just cast your Orb of Winter and or they have full stacks of Wither instantaneously, so it's not really been an issue at all. Yeah, running a focus with a bunch of energy shield, it's nice. It's life pool. We've got some resistance stats on there. The mana and attribute requirements are dead stats. They're nothing crazy going on here. Rings with rarity and resistance and some intelligence. It's, you know, nothing crazy going on. We got 3 dead stats on this ring, but a bunch of resistances. Your amulet, you know, it's good. You can get your +2 level to all minion skills. This is helpful for your single target damage because it will apply to those skeletal brutes you summon on the weapon swap. Other than that, just looking for the % increased maximum energy shield is very nice. But life and mana are also kind of dead stats on this build. Strength is whatever. Mana regeneration kind of dead because we're not casting skills. So really just looking for those plus to level of minion skills and energy shield. You can also look for spirit if you're struggling to get spirit on your body armor or scepter. Just to edge out another aura or another skeletal brute minion on your weapon swap. So, of course, very good. I've opted for a hybrid evasion energy shield body armor. You can definitely get better rolls than this, but this is pretty good. Coming out at around 406 energy shield after the quality and the double iron rune sockets. This is good, but again, I would opt for like a Hexer's robe or something, like a high energy shield Hexer's robe before you get to the point that you are taking all these evasion passives on the tree and ghost dance, because until you get decently high evasion, your points are going to be better spent just all in enhanced barrier energy shield passives up here and going back to the start of which, like I said. And energy shield pure will actually perform better in some bossing scenarios where evasion doesn't work, like with big area of effect attacks. So there is that to consider as well, but even with the hybrid, I have not found my survivability to be in question really anywhere. So it feels very good, especially with this. We're at a cool 7,500 almost evasion with 71% evade chance. With Ghost Dance, you know, that's excellent. We're getting a 350 recovery every time we get hit, which is less than 30% of the time, so it's just very good. Belt, also very standard, just a bunch of resistances. And yeah, that's what's going on. Let's see if I did not miss any gems here. Decompose looking good. Blasphemy, yeah, I mean, it's the 2 curses here. Of course, we're using Heightened Curse. And then also Ritualistic Curse because the downside of this gem is functionally removed. I wonder, I did show sacrifice. I don't even know what this isn't doing anything here.
What is it?
Ghost Dance, fast forward just to reduce the time between the generation of Ghost Shroud stacks. Grim Feast. Blink is very nice. Ingenuity, of course, for increased cooldown recovery rate. The reason Blink is on here is, firstly, it's comfortable and will help you speed up mapping, and also be really nice for certain boss mechanics where they demand movement. But sometimes if you get surrounded, because your damage is through walking, if you can't walk around, your two options are to throw down your poisonous concoction and let it poison one, but sometimes it's faster and safer to just blink out of there and continue walking. So that spell very comfortable for those sorts of situations, and I do recommend it if you've got the spirit for it. In order of priority to get up and running, I would probably say Grim Feast and Blasphemies are doing the most work for you. And then once you've got that good evasion, energy shield, defense layers up, Ghost Dance is worth it. And then Blink, doesn't have to be there. You can also remove Heightened Curse if you need more spirit. Oh, you can see that tried to summon a Skeletal Brute, but let's get rid of that in our weapon swap 1. Yeah, I mean, that's 46 spirit just from removing Heightened Curse, so you can definitely save there if you're needing to budget spirit early on. But don't forget, you can roll it on the body armor and the amulet, and of course, that is your primary desired stat on the scepter. So, yeah, it's been good. And yeah, really that's it. I'm going to jump into a tier 18, and we'll take a look at some of the performance with Breach and Ritual, just to show what's going on here. Hopefully also a boss, and you can see the decent single target damage there as well. But that's it. Thanks for sticking around. I'll probably continue to make builds videos, as I've been having an absolute blast on the different characters in Path of Exile 2, and I hope you guys have been too. Goodbye. One more thing before we jump into a tier 18, I wanted to show some of the jewel stat priorities you might want to look for on this build. I've really got nothing crazy, but broadly you're looking for chaos damage, area of effect for, the clouds and the curses. Minions have maximum life, increases your single target damage. Area of effective curses is nice. The percent of maximum energy shield as additional stun threshold is actually really nice if you're not pathing all the way to dampening shield, because it will help you not get stun locked and just fall over from the smallest of hits. Duration of damaging elements, magnitude of poison is also a nice one to get. Of course, your standard energy shield defensive stats are good, like increased maximum or increased start of energy shield. And that's broadly what you're looking for. This build does absolutely fine with none of those, but they are all nice bonuses, so that's kind of what you should be looking for. Without further deliberation, let's hop into a tier 18 map with a Breach, just to show off the performance there, because I think that is one of the places where it really shines. Yeah, so we'll be running this. It's a little, we've got 2 damage mods. We've got minus max resist and crit damage bonus, and then yeah, the rest doesn't really matter, but it's reasonably rippy, nothing crazy. We're not dealing with 35% elemental penetration or anything, so it will be a-okay, and this build is very comfortable even with some dangerous damage mods on it. Another nice thing that this build does, just because the poison clouds will actually chain around corners, so it can make these weird sort of narrow maneuverable maps feel a little better. You see, we're just performing crime in the local zip code, no problem. One thing that this build does have happen sometimes is if you get a rare that spawns in that's got some sort of fire effect, it will just chain explode the clouds. This is rarely an issue though, because you can kill everything so fast it doesn't really matter. If it's really giving you trouble, just throw a couple of poisonous concoctions at it, and that will take care of it without lighting the clouds on fire.
Face me.
You can see there, single target from the the minions you have, no problem whatsoever. Sometimes you get some weird, I've noticed, visual artifacting with the some of the corpses that will explode into corpses of a different minion type. It's just kind of a funny bug that I'm sure will get ironed out. But I mean, you can see here we're casting no skills really, just kind of walking through with our blasphemy. On corruption maps, this is especially funny because you'll kill a group of monsters with great haste, really, and then it will summon in another group of monsters into massive multiple stacks of gas clouds, and they'll simply dissolve. They will spawn in and then despawn, and that will really be it. It's very funny. For similar reasons, it makes ritual basically a joke. You see there some of the weird corpse artifacting stuff. I'm not sure what's going on there. So here's our boss performance. It's gonna be chill. You know, you walk up, they die, you throw your winter orb, and then you just hang out and walk around. You do it again. You know, because you're not really casting skills, like all I'm doing is weapon swapping and occasionally throwing out winter orb, I can really focus on doing the boss mechanics and, you know, not having any trouble there. But, you know, pretty good. It's not like spark levels of spawn in and then delete the boss, but it is incredibly comfortable. And with multiple defensive layers, you really are not going to have any trouble with map bosses or pinnacle bosses. This build is done sesh just fine as well as some of the expedition bosses. You know. See no trouble there as well. And you can see as I'm approaching like a new pack of monsters where I don't have the chain party going, I just quickly weapon swap, continue to walk, drop my little bombs and then the poison prolifs into the pack with no problem. Sometimes you can get some weird stuff with height, I've noticed, where it will go up or down stairs, so that is something to consider if you're experiencing a little bit of jank there. I suspect that's probably a bug and will get fixed though. But maybe not. This is probably not the best map to showcase a breach on just because of all the windy corridors, but we will still have no problem whatsoever.
Patience.
And sometimes it's better to show a build in a suboptimal situation because, you know, I can load up an island map or whatever, or a shore map, and say, look at how good it chains between everything. And it does, and it is very good, but you're not always able to choose your maps, so, you know, good to see it in a variety of circumstances, as that is what you are actually playing the game in. Corruption monsters spawn in and then despawn, walking through copious quantities of the energy shield remnants. No problem there. Yep. But another thing that makes this absolutely hilarious with Ritual is, at the moment, Ritual is 4 out of 5 of the conditions are chaos damage buffs, and with chaos inoculation we're simply immune to chaos damage, topped with the fact that you're in a small area that they have to spawn in. They will spawn into multiple clouds of poison, perish, and then perpetuate the cycle as you decompose their newly created corpse, as it were. I'm gonna go track down all these rare monsters. God. I do appreciate that they've added in the checkpoints. It's a nice change. I think you could use a little more checkpoints around the map, as I'd say about half the time I'm just not able to use a checkpoint to get where I want to go. But it's a step in the right direction. So hopefully they expand upon that in the future. That would be nice to see. Oh, here's a breach. You can see this is a fire effect one, might explode some of our clouds. Yeah, no issue there. Another So we'll just spawn in our guys and then summon the breach. Another thing that happens with shrines, there's one shrine that causes you to summon a bunch of fire meteors around you. You actually want to avoid that because it will cause your clouds to just explode instead of poisoning. You can see here we've got some sort of fire mob. No real issue as we take it down quickly and we go back to just spreading poison clouds. But yeah, you walk up chain. Put a bunch of wood in there, and then they all die. Yeah, not great monster density here with the narrow little corridors. But you can imagine, maybe I'll show another clip in a more open map that is just showing the sheer magnitude of chaining between packs that can really accomplish in a high density scenario. You know, just walking. That's all you have to do. You don't have to press any buttons. You just walk around. Very comfortable. For really very little to get running. Like you don't need a lot to get this going. It's just the boots, and then, you know, the gloves are nice, but also very unnecessary. I did not run them for quite a while and had really no problem whatsoever. Now we get to do the fun, pick up all the individual breach splinters and mechanic. Ooh, that would be a change that would be nice if those would auto pick up, but alas, this is the reality we find ourselves constrained to for the moment.
Patience.
And back getting that rare. Beautiful.
An easy trophy.
You know, nothing crazy. Oh, we got a second breach. That's very nice. Take it. Backtrack.
Not yet.
Just walking through. See if I throw a poisonous concoction here just because it's a little hard to chain across the bridge. Starts everything going easy. Grab across the hands. Over here. You kind of do this thing when you approach a pack where you're kind of like jump into them with blink and then weapon swap and start to walk backwards. And they'll, of course, chase you backwards at a slowed rate with temporal chains and the hinder curse passive. And they'll just walk into their demise, as it were. There won't be a lot else going on. And then once you've got the chain going, you're just walking around and really having no issue whatsoever. Like, rare monsters walk up to you and then they disappear and you're like, oh, there was a rare monster there. So it's heinous, truly. I think that's gonna do it. 34 monsters left. We probably don't have another breach. Let me go make sure I got all of my splinters.
I'm not ready.
3 over here. Here.
Not yet.
Yeah. That's some standard mapping performance. Thanks for watching.